Sung Jiho is a god-tier gamer in an online game, ranked #1 in the world. As he's playing the game, somebody rings the doorbell and delivers a parcel to Sung. He opens the sealed box and finds a gift inside with a custom message sent to him by the developers of the game, One Sword. However, it is revealed that only about 302 players could actively continue playing the game due to its extreme difficulty. Eventually, the game gets shut down due to low player count. About 2 years later, we see Sung, who has become uninterested in games due to losing his top position in the most difficult game, and no other games can actually run on his computer. On the way to class, Sung notices a recruitment poster for a new game. However, he decides to avoid it. Sung receives his grades in class, which haven't improved at all. His friend teases him about his condition, but they both end up going to a local internet cafe to play some games online. After a few hours of continuously losing, Sung goes to use the restroom. As he exits the bathroom, he notices another player on a different system playing a swordsman game. Sung is shocked upon seeing the immense piloting speed of the player. The player is revealed to be a beautiful girl named Ari. Soon, a handsome boy named Chang Yoon enters the cafe and asks for Ari. He reaches Ari's cubicle and informs her that he's here to summon her for tutoring upon her mother's request, as all she's been doing lately is playing online games. Sung inquires about the game the girl was playing from his friend, and he reveals the name of the game to be Sword Rush. Sung reaches home and snoops around the internet, where he is dismayed by the similarity between Sword Rush and One Sword. Sung reminisces about the time he spent hundreds of hours protecting his character, who wore a yellow cape, from other players. However, as he comes back to his senses, he realizes that the game Sword Rush is just the result of blatant plagiarism. Sung then searches for more information on the internet and finds out that the Korean company was bought by a US-based company. Shocked, Sung finally realizes that One Sword has re-entered the market. The next day, Sung stops before the same notice that was recruiting players for Sword Rush and wonders if he could play again. Suddenly, Ari appears out of nowhere and asks Sung if he's applying as well, and a flustered Sung answers in affirmation. She explains that she's in the esports club and asks Sung about his tier level. However, Sung simply replies that he doesn't know, after which Ari refuses to let him join the club while going for the poster. She then proceeds to upgrade the recruitment notice, which reads that the new recruit will have to beat the president in a 1-versus-1 match. After class, Sung wakes up Jin Young to inform him about the recruitment, while the class delinquent Shin Woo Jin passes both of them by. Sung reveals to Jin Young that his passion for gaming is reignited and that he wants to be the world's #1 in Sword Rush. Meanwhile, Ari enters the internet cafe, where the owner asks her to look over the counter as the part-timer hasn't arrived yet, and Ari doesn't really pay for the time she plays. Sung and Jin Young play the game in the cafe as well, while Jin Young explains the players and levels to Sung. They both engage in a 1-versus-1 match, where Sung obliterates Jin Young on the first try. Sung starts crying as his beloved game is back, while Ari watches them both from the background. In a flashback, Chang Yun inquires about the recruitment poster advertised by Ari on their way home. She goes on to explain that she's in the process of building a team through the gaming club because she wants to be a pro gamer. The next day, Chang Yun worries about Ari as he realizes that all Sword Rush players are actually One Sword players. He comes to the conclusion that Ari needs a high-ranking One Sword player in order to become a pro gamer. The next day, Ari reaches the cafe along with Chang Yun and asks him if he wants to pester her again, but he ignores her. He sits down beside her, claiming that he's just dropping by. Chang Yun asks about how the recruitment process is going, and if Ari has come across a ranker yet. They coherently talk about Sung as Ari vows to annihilate him during the recruitment event with her skill. Back at home, Sung reopens a box of notes he made while playing One Sword. After that night, Jin Young advises him to focus on the character he'll be playing for the recruitment at the cafe. Sung asks for the fastest character. However, after much searching, Jin Young isn't able to find a suitable one. Sung then asks Jin Young to let him play with a utility character, which gets him scolded by him, as utility characters don't do much damage. Sung then goes on to explain that he'll just dodge all attacks. Sung vows to defeat a rank player that day, while the duo sits beside a well-dressed gorilla to begin their journey. After playing games at the cafe, Sung goes back home and daydreams about beating Ari. However, after he quits daydreaming, He decides to search YouTube for a character similar to his in Sword Rush. The next day, after school, it is revealed that Sung flunked the exam and that he has to take a supplementary test when he's supposed to battle Eri. Jin-young rushes to the cafe to register instead of Sung so that he can play. Jin-young reaches the cafe to find a huge number of players registering, along with Shin Woo-jin, the delinquent, while Sung writes his exam. Shin Woo-jin realizes that everyone except the president is a novice at the game. Meanwhile, Sung leaves his exam halfway and runs to the cafe with a sorry note on his paper addressed to the teacher. He tries to run towards the cafe, but ends up taking a taxi instead due to low stamina. As soon as Sung arrives, Jin-young informs him that his turn is next. He also tells him that 4 people have already joined, including Shin. With only 1 spot left, Sung's name is called out, and he hands his bag over to Jin-young to take his turn. The battle begins on a floating island, with the president purposely waiting for Sung to engage her. Sung stumbles towards his seat and finally takes his place at the computer. Sung's character starts taking shape in the game, while Eri tries to anticipate what kind of character her opponent will use. Despite Jin-young's resistance in the past, Sung ends up choosing a utility character named Spiro. This disappoints Eri, evident from her facial expressions. Eri gets confused as to why Sung would choose a utility character in a 1 versus 1 battle, while Sung realizes that the character's point of view is quite low due to its height. Sung checks the character's speed with a few moves and deems it to be fast enough for him. Eri, however, is not amused and rushes towards Sung, as she's exhausted from filtering out gag characters like his. Sung tries to reason with Eri while dodging all her attacks, and Jin-young notices this from the sidelines. Eri hatches a plan to hit Sung's mosquito character with a small strike followed by a special attack, while Sung is exhilarated by his ability to play so fast. Spiro moves forward and starts hitting Ari's character with minimal damage while taking no hits himself. Sung corners Ari and plans to finish her off with a special counter, but suddenly his computer screen turns black. He points towards his monitor and tries to gather attention to his situation. However, Ari attacks and deals substantial damage to Spyro. Ari prepares to unleash her special attack, and Sung realizes that he's bound to lose even if he counters, as his hit points are quite low and he won't be able to withstand the strike before the counter. In a flashback, Sung reminisces about the days when he couldn't afford an expensive graphics card, so he started playing the game by relying on the sound characters made while moving, reducing his reliance on the screen. Back in the present, Sung initiates his counterattack, and his character Spiro moves at an insane speed, confusing Eri. Spiro starts moving erratically, perplexing everyone in the crowd, including Jin-young and Eri. Ari uses her ultimate skill, Prominence Blue, and advances towards Spyro. The crowd becomes excited, anticipating Eri's victory. However, Sung seems to have figured something out. Suddenly, both players' characters collide, and a cloud of dust envelops the area between them. The crowd wonders about the outcome of the fight, and as the dust settles, Spiro stands triumphantly over Ari's character. The crowd erupts into cheers for Sung. The next day, at the gaming club, Shin is seen confronting another boy, asserting his dominance. Ari enters the room and explains that Sung is not officially in the club as she won the game. In a flashback, Spiro is shown falling down after taking damage from Eri's character's damage over time effect. Chang-yoon looks over at Sung from across the cubicles and realizes that Sung is none other than the #1 player of One Sword himself, while Jin-young appears to be furious with Sung. In a flashback, Chang-yoon is seen searching about One Sword ranked players and wonders where the #1 player vanished. He wonders if the player is in their 20s or 30s and has since left the game to pursue his or her career. But seeing Sung in action at the cafe against Ari makes him confident about his hunch of Sung being #1, One Sword player. While going back to his home after the duel with Jin-young, is extremely distraught as he made Sung aware of the character's abilities and DOTs hundreds of times before the game while Sung writes something down in a notebook. Sung is not at all sad about his defeat. On the contrary, he's happy that he came so close to defeating a ranked opponent. He iterates that he wants to research a bit more and get better at the game and become #1. Back at the club, Eri welcomes everyone and introduces them. Suddenly, a teacher named Yoon Tae-in, who is the moderator of the club and asks about everyone's rankings. As everyone in the club starts playing, hours pass by, and suddenly some parents appear and drag their children out of the club and make them quit. The remaining team regroups at a cafe. Shin advises Ari to let Sung join, however. She leaves claiming that there are other people in line as well, and reminds him that she's the one who gets to decide the members. Ari announces the reselection the next day, but the masses refuse to join as they recall her trash-talking and calling them noobs. After class, Ari is distraught in the club room as Chong-yun enters. Ari begrudgingly reinvites Sung, and he challenges her to a match for qualifying once again. However, Sung lays down a condition. If he wins, he asks Ari to let Jin-young join the team as well. The battle begins, and Sung surprises everyone by completely changing his character preference. The team members watch the fight in awe, realizing how much Sung has improved in such a short time, a testament to his skills as the previous #1 player. Ari and the others are shocked at Sung's performance and struggle to keep up. During the battle, Ari recalls Chang-yun's advice about not being picky with teammates, realizing that her stubbornness may hinder her chances of turning pro. As Ari's character prepares for a big attack, Sung's character charges straight towards her. Sung lands a direct hit on Ari's character, leaving Jin-young contemplating whether Sung's victory is truly something to celebrate, as it goes against his own wishes. In frustration, Sung gets up and questions Ari about why she wasn't playing as seriously as before. Ari explains that Sung had chosen an advantageous character, and she was simply testing his skills in different aspects. Ari gets up and leaves, acknowledging Jin-young's presence with congratulations. After school, Jin-young and Shun engage in conversation, and Choi So-yeon from the Esports Club introduces herself. Meanwhile, Chang-yun and Ari discuss Sung's talent on their way home. Ari expresses her frustration, stating that she doesn't want to end up being Sung's sidekick. The next day, Mr. Yeon announces that the club is now official and assigns roles to everyone. As they all leave, Chang-yun hands the teacher a request for an official practice match against another school, while Shin challenges Sung to a fight downstairs. Shin declares that he wants to defeat Sung's speedro. However, Sung simply answers that he doesn't like the way he talks while taking a fighting stance, which startles Shin. Sung then declares that he needs to go home and do research on a game as he's already a latecomer. Sung then leaves both Jin-young and Shin standing on their own and runs off while Shin holds Jin-young by the collar and asks him why Sung is like that. The next day, the club decides to meet at the internet cafe, but Shin pesters Sung all day while in class. Sung then exclaims that Shin's pestering is getting on his nerves. Shin replies with his usual vulgar words, but Sung gets offended and asks him why he talks like that. Sung agrees to a match only if Shin stops cursing. They reach the cafe and start the matchup. They enter the lava map, while Sung chooses Spiro once again. They start a death match with no time limit, and Shin proclaims that it has been some time since he played against a decent utility player. Shin is an offensive healer, capable of self-healing and attacking simultaneously. This is a bad matchup for Spiro, as his best attack is Reflect, and the healer doesn't have any flashy or big attack. The match starts, and Sung is clearly at a disadvantage. Suddenly, Ari arrives at her uncle's cafe and beats up both Sung and Shin for wasting time. The others reach the location as well, and they start practicing. Suddenly, Chang-yun arrives at the cafe, informs the team that they have a match with a rival school, and disappears. While going home, Chang-yun encounters Sung and Jin-young. He leaves the two after a quick chat, explaining that Jin-young should carry his weight on the team. The next day, the group meets, and Mr. Yeon announces that the school they'll be facing is Yongju Digital High School, which worries everyone as their team finished 4th last time. Even after playing with benched players, the team was able to score 4th place. Chang-yun reveals that if they defeat a ranking team from the previous year, they will get a ranking themselves even though they are newbies. Ari's head is down while everyone talks. She raises her head and reveals that she originally wanted to enroll in Yongju for their esports program but got rejected. The team disperses, and Ari vows to defeat the school. The day of the match arrives, and Sung is the first one to reach the location and sees Yongju High School, emerge from the van. Sung shakes their hands but gets brutally disrespected after they realize Sung is just a provisional ranker and a noob. Later, Ari enters the room and wonders if she's the first one there, but she spots the other team already practicing. The Yangju Digital High School team keeps playing the game with full concentration, paying no heed to the fact that the opponent has entered the arena. Ari feels depressed as the other team's coach didn't even bother to show up, and she thinks that the Yangju team thinks her other teammates are just losers. But as she scans her eyes through the aisles of computers, she finds Sung sitting at one of them, concentrating on the game. The match is decided to be played in the zero-gravity arena with the following rules. It will be a 4-4 elimination mode, and the first team to reach 3 out of 5 wins will be declared the winner. All the players manifest their respective avatars, namely Spyro, Link, Volatile, and Bluminance, on the map and get ready for the matchup. The opponents choose their characters as well and enter the server. The game commences, and the opposing team immediately attacks Ari's group. They plan to quickly finish off the amateurs and go home. One of Yangju's players starts encircling Sung and the others, gaining momentum in the zero-gravity map. Jinyoung explains that the group plans to triple their speed by jumping off asteroids. The team thinks that Ari's group are morons because they're not reacting. The other team's player goes after Shin's Link in an effort to kill it. However, Shin manages to avoid it at the last second. Suddenly, Shin claims that the team doesn't play with sound, which startles them. Sung takes this opportunity to attack with Spyro and lands a successful blow. The Yangju team gets startled as Spyro keeps hitting them with increasing speed. Sung, with his control over Spyro, rains mayhem on the other team, and they start falling for his attacks simultaneously. Sung manages to avoid another attack from the enemy team and proceeds to trample the character. Jinyoung explains that the confidence of the enemy team is slowly eroding and won't last long. Facing the overwhelming power of a utility character, the other team spirits are crushed. As they plan a counterattack with their opponents, the other members of Sung's squad join in the attack. Blue Eminence, Ari's character, lands a near-perfect blow on one of Yangju's players, directing him towards the ground. Helplessly, the other team members watch Sung's team dominate the gameplay. Suddenly, another player fails to spot the approaching Volatile from behind and gets critically hit, crashing onto a nearby asteroid. Another member of the Yangju team tries to go after Shin's healer, but Shin counters, and the rest of the team arrives just in time to blast the opponent off. With only 2 minutes and 30 seconds into the game, the Yangju players are crushed as Sung's squad takes home the first round. Mr. Yon gets exhilarated upon seeing his beloved team's victory, while Ari looks over at Sung, thinking she has found a splendid teammate. The two go for a high five, but as soon as Sung's hand reaches Ari's palm, he collapses onto the floor. Sung is rushed to a room where he regains consciousness and rests. Ari tries to find the reason behind his collapse and comes to the conclusion that Sung, due to not being used to playing in three-dimensional, has developed three-dimensional motion sickness. Ari realizes that Sung was pushing himself too hard to beat the opponents. In another room, Sung wakes up and tries to force his way to the gaming room, but Mr. Yan informs him that the match has already begun. We see Jinyoung fighting in Sung's place and doing quite well for a silver rank player. In a flashback, Jinyoung is informed that he'll take Sung's place as a member of the team, despite being a bench warmer. Back in the match, Jinyoung starts getting outmatched. However, Soyeon comes to his rescue, playing with Spyro. Ari decides to quickly end the fight as Soyeon and Jinyoung won't be able to hold on much longer. Suddenly, Jinyoung gets attacked from behind, and all the members shout to make him avoid the attack. As the opponent approaches, Jinyoung turns and counters with his weapon, surprising everyone. In a flashback, we see Sung handing Jinyoung a player's guide for the tank character he plays with. Back in the room, Sung is surprised as Mr. Yon reveals to him that Jinyoung is his replacement. Sung calmly replies with an affirmative answer, stating that he believes in Jinyoung. In a flashback, Jinyoung is seen reading through the manual Sung made for him and concludes that it is easy, even for an idiot like himself. The confidence of the other team, Yongju dips even further, as Aries' squad seems to be performing well even without Sung. The team leader of Yongju looks over at his squad to discuss a new attack plan, but they reply that the utility player is going to counter whatever they do, no matter how strongly they attack, while looking extremely disheartened. The leader takes responsibility for underestimating their opponents and tries to think of a way out. Suddenly, they realize that the movement of the utility character, Spiro, has gone sluggish. As they don't know which player is controlling the avatar, the leader realizes that the Spiro character might not actually be good and hatches a plan with his teammates. Ari orders Jingyong to tank an attack from the enemy, so that she can strike him down as soon as he attacks Jingyong. Jingyong immediately agrees and initiates the attack. However, Ari notices the sudden change in playing tactics from the Yongju team as their DPS gets separated. Suddenly, the leader confronts Spiro, making Soyeon worry that she'll be found out as the imposter. The leader immediately lands a hit on Soyeon's Spyro and moves on to confront Jingyong. Jingyong follows all the instructions written in Sung's manual while fighting his opponent. However, as the fight progresses, he remembers not fully reading the manual as he was not expected to play. The leader takes this opportunity to strike Jingyong in the neck. The leader tries to motivate his teammates to win, as they won't be considered for the team if the main players find out they lost to nobody. As Jingyong's tank gets struck down, the other members take down Spiro as well. Ari becomes afraid of the position she's in, as it's 2 versus 4, and instructs Shine to hold out until Sung returns. Shin tries to comprehend Ari's plan, as she means that she wants to lose until Sung arrives. However, Shin refuses to go down without fighting and decides to end his healing and attack the enemy himself. The leader of Yongju interprets Shin's move as childish, as his teammate counters the healer. However, as the leader tries to slash Shin, he jumps over to avoid the attack and lands a hit on the leader's tank. But as his attacks reach the leader's character, the leader blocks them, and Shin finds himself surrounded by all 4 opponents. Shin gets himself killed, but is seen to be proud of his decision. He sits down with his hands folded and orders Ari to take care of the situation herself as the 4 members of the enemy team approach. Ari, in a fit of frustration, shouts out that she didn't need the likes of Shin to win anyway and advances forward. All the members of the Yongju team attack Ari simultaneously, and she is still held down by her thoughts on why she let the situation come to this point. The Yongju team analyzes that Ari's leadership isn't good, as she literally forced her teammates to play solo in the end. Adding to that fact, she simply relies on her mechanics and considers her teammates as mere decorations. In a flashback, we see Chae-Yun advising Ari to prepare for her match. However, she refuses, stating that they are no match against her, and she'll beat down all of the first-year Yongju team throws at her. Back in the present, Ari manages to take down one of the opponent's players but breaks her sword in the process. Ari regenerates her sword and takes her stance. However, her opponents attack her simultaneously once again. In the other room, Sung finally wakes up and tries to walk towards the game room. However, Mr. Yeon enters and informs him that all the matches are already over. Mr. Yeon and Sung enter the room, and Mr. Yeon asks everyone to pull themselves together. He consoles them and advises them not to take this defeat too seriously. He takes full responsibility for their performance and acknowledges that he didn't contribute much. He promises to be more involved from the next game onwards, staying with them after school and helping to come up with strategies for battling opponents. He concludes his speech by reminding them that they will likely face more losses in the future, so they should cherish any victories they achieve. Suddenly, Ari bursts out shouting, and Sung tries to console her, telling her not to cry. However, Ari clarifies that she wasn't crying in the first place. Sung goes to get his bag and takes out a sports drink, handing it to Jingyong. Jingyong asks why Sung is carrying the bag, and Sung replies that he wanted to look like an athlete. Ari confronts Sung about his motion sickness and asks why he didn't disclose it earlier. Sung simply answers that he didn't know about it himself, since it's his first experience with it. Sung hands Ari a sports drink, and she praises him for his performance in the first game. As everyone starts heading home, Soyeon turns back and compliments Jingyong's turning slash in the game, saying it was very cool, which makes Jingyong blush. On their way home, Jingyong tries to convince Sung to start using other characters, as Spiro is not a popular choice among pro gamers. Sung asks Jingyong to stop criticizing Spiro, as he has been using it since his one-sword days. Jin-young cringes with embarrassment upon realizing that Spiro is a character based on the stats and name of the #1 player. Sung promises to make the use of utility characters popular again in team matches. The Yangju students, on their way home, discuss how Spiro's gameplay resembled that of their senior player. Meanwhile, at home, Sung searches for cures for 3D motion sickness, but finds answers suggesting to endure it rather than cure it. Reflecting on their defeat, the other members of Dano High School begin preparing their strategies. Ari receives a call from Chang Yoon, who belittles her for losing and asks for the replay of her match to study it and avoid future losses. A few days later, Mr. Yoon is seen making strategy documents for the club and printing them out in the faculty lounge. At home, Sung ponders about One Sword and how he dealt with gameplay delay, but now he struggles with a new problem altogether, which is 3D motion sickness. However, his sickness is bearable on a flat map, and it was just his bad luck to end up on the zero-gravity map. He decides to adjust once again for the sake of his teammates, as he always has. The next day, Sung takes a taxi and tries to read comics while in motion, but ends up vomiting due to the motion sickness. Meanwhile, at school, Jin-young dreams about So-yeon, unaware that Sung is watching him, acts strangely from behind. Jin-young wakes up and starts studying the manual in an effort to be more useful in the next game. The club meets after school, in the club room, where Chang Yoon reveals that he has set up the next friendly match for the club. He mentions that he also arranged their previous matches and credits Mr. Yoon for helping to contact the other schools. Chang Yoon announces that their next opponents are from Pogok High, a team that dropped out in the preliminaries last year due to an unlucky matchup with Yangju High. He further reveals that 2 of their members are trainees for professional teams. Chang Yoon states that he watched the replays of their matches and emphasizes that Pogok High should not be taken lightly. He presents a binder, declaring that the team will now switch from playing with guts to playing with strategy. Chang Yoon proposes to center their strategy around Sung, having him play the first round quickly and then rest until he's able to play subsequent rounds. They plan to practice this strategy until the school competition cup. With no complaints against Chang Yoon's strategy, everyone agrees to use his tactics. As they're about to leave, Mr. Yan drops his documents and Sung picks them up. He's hit with a eureka moment and rushes to the internet cafe. At the cafe, Jin-young vows to defeat Pogok High School. However, a player sitting at another computer stands up, grabs Jin-young by the collar, and challenges him to repeat what he said. It turned out that the player was from Pogok High School, and he was angry that Jin-young wanted to defeat their school. However, Jin-young didn't expect a Pogok High student to be present, and they were just hyping themselves up. The player stopped threatening Jin-young and left. Afterwards, Jin-young bought a drink and offered it to the Pogok player as an apology. The Pogok player also apologized for grabbing Jin-young's collar. The Pogok player reciprocated the apology and even gave them some potato chips as a gesture of reconciliation, admitting that he was sensitive about people trash-talking his gaming skills. They eventually accepted each other. Suddenly, Sung suggested playing the game together, which the Pogok player immediately agreed to, despite being competitors. They became teammates and played the game together. Meanwhile, Mr. Yoon was in his office, trying to find other teams for the esports club to practice with, hoping to help improve the school's esports club. Sung chose Spiro for the game, and the Pogok player thought that Sung wasn't taking it seriously and was deliberately picking a weak character. However, Sung revealed that Spiro was his favorite character, surprising the Pogok player, who realized that Sung wasn't trying to hide anything. Jin-young discovered that Sung had revealed their secret to their competitor and tried to stop him by grabbing his neck, urging him to play something else. They started the game with a 3 versus 3 match, with Jin-young choosing a tank and instructing his team to protect their healer. Sung and the Pogok player agreed to the plan. Jin-young was shocked that a Silver 2 player like himself was agreed upon by a Grandmaster and Sung, the #1 player in One Sword. The enemy launched an attack on the Pogok player, and he took some hits. Suddenly, Sung appeared behind the enemy to kill them, surprising the Pogok player with his unexpected support. Sung fought the enemy on equal footing, and the Pogok player joined in, trying to defeat the enemy together. After dealing significant damage to the enemy, Sung immediately rushed to help Jin-young. The Pogok player was impressed that an unranked player on a newbie team like Sung was performing so well. In Pogok High School, the player from earlier informed one of his teammates that their matchup was coming up soon. However, his teammate ignored it, believing that Dano High was just a newbie team and an easy win. The player disagreed and told his teammate that one of the players in Dano High was good. His teammate wondered if the player in Dano High was better than him, but the player, driven by his pride, refused to admit it and confidently declared that he was a better player than the player ranked 125th in one sword. At Chang Yun's apartment, he was engrossed in watching the replay of the first match and couldn't help but be amazed by Sung's incredible gameplay. He felt like he was watching a highlight reel of Sung's skills. Suddenly, Chang Yun noticed a YouTuber named Garaf, who was also a streamer of Sword Rush game and had previously played one sword. Curious, Chang Yun started watching Garaf's stream and realized that while the player was skilled, he doubted that Sung would lose to him in a 1-versus-1 match. This reassured Chang Yun that they should stick to their plan. Meanwhile, at the internet cafe, So-yeon and Ari were practicing the game together. They engaged in a conversation about their school project, but Ari quickly dismissed it, stating that she didn't like talking about school work. They then shifted their discussion to their upcoming match against Pogok High School. So Yeon mentioned that there was a skilled DPS player from Pogok High, which made Ari worry. However, Ari remained determined to defeat the DPS player and expressed her determination to come out victorious. A few days later, it was time for the friendly match between Dano High School and Pogok High School. The match was scheduled to start at 2 p.m. Sung arrived second, followed by Ari, who greeted him warmly. To Ari's surprise, Sung handed her something, leaving her intrigued. After 30 minutes, Shin and Jingyong arrived, urging everyone to start warming up. The team from Pogok High School arrived, visibly upset that Jae Deok, the 125th ranked player, was late. Lee Tae-hun, the main tank of Pogok, approached the Dano High team and mistakenly assumed that Shin was the captain. However, Ari stood up and corrected him, introducing herself as the captain and expressing her wish for a good game. Mr. Yeon and Chang Yun arrived to support the team, and so Yeon joined them as well. Mr. Yeon suggested that they should do a team huddle and told everyone to stretch their hands out together. However, they all found it embarrassing, so Yeon proposed that they do it quietly, and Sung immediately agreed, stretching out his hand. Eventually, everyone joined in, reaching out their hands together. Chang Yun noticed that Ari was wearing a wrist guard and became curious. They formed a huddle, and the Pogok team started to worry as Jae Deok still hadn't arrived. The map chosen for the match was the Tower of Torment. Dano High had a composition of 2 DPS, 1 support, and 1 healer, with Spyro, Link, Bluminance, and Saigon. Pogok High had 1 tank, 1 DPS, and 2 healers, with Baronet, Kier, Jigra, and Imamaze. The match began with Kier leaping towards Saigon to slash him, but Spiro managed to provide support and counter Kier's attack. Suddenly, Baronet leapt from above, mentioning his duty as captain to protect his team. Sung started to worry that their damage output might not be enough to end the round quickly due to Pogok's dual healer composition. Ari recalled Chang Yun's strategy and instructed Sung to attack swiftly. Sung wondered about her plan, and Baronet seized the opportunity to slash Spiro. However, Bluminance managed to parry the attack, and Spyro countered one of Baronet's strikes with precision. Spiro dashed towards the enemy, and So-yeon mentioned that Sung could play normally instead of going overboard since the enemy team was trying to prolong the battle. Ari noticed a plan unfolding and ordered Shin to focus on one of the healers. However, Shin confidently stated that he could handle both healers by himself. With the signal given, everyone began executing their respective plans. Spiro engaged Baronet, utilizing his speed to the fullest and relentlessly attacking him. Baronet ordered his healers to assist him, but Sheen intercepted their healing attempts, surprising them with his frontline engagement as a healer. Shin successfully stopped both healers, while Bluminance and Saigon capitalized on the advantage, attempting to finish off the remaining enemies. However, Kier tried to stop them. Bluminance easily overpowered Kier, but the enemy healer, Jigra, managed to heal Kier. A fierce duel ensued between Bluminance and Kier. Sung suggested a plan to prioritize eliminating the DPS as they were the enemy team's only damage dealers. By taking out the DPs, Sung's team would gain a significant advantage in terms of damage output. So Yeon and Ari stuck together, targeting the DPS Kier. Kier fought valiantly against the two of them, resulting in an intense battle filled with explosive strikes and visual effects. Eventually, they managed to defeat Kier, immediately shifting their focus to support their healer and eliminate the enemy team's remaining healers. With their combined efforts, they easily defeated the healers, and Spiro successfully defeated Baronet, the tank. They celebrated their first round victory. Jiho finally arrived, and his team scolded him for being late and causing them to lose the first match. However, Lee, the team captain, calmed them down and instructed Jiho to quickly prepare for the next match. The enemy team's secret weapon had finally arrived, and they were prepared to give it their all. Mr. Yon was delighted by their first victory, and Sung high-fived Jin Young, knowing that Jin Young would be playing in the second match. Chang Yun tried to remind his team about the strategy, but Mr. Yon stopped him, asserting that strategies won't always determine who wins and loses. Circumstances change, requiring flexibility, and at times, players must decide for themselves what's best. However, he praised Chang Yun for his analytical skill. Concerned, Mr. Yun checked on Sung to ensure he was all right. Sung, unafflicted by motion sickness, was told by Mr. Yun to rest. Sung displayed unwavering belief in his friend Jing Yong, who was to take his place, as well as in Mr. Yun. This moved Mr. Yun deeply. In round 2, the enemy team picked the same characters, but their DPS was different. It was a character named Jester. Sung's team, on the other hand, also retained their characters, but switched their DPS for a tank named Aksa. Soyeon played the character Spiro, attempting to act as an imposter before the enemy team could discover their strategy. Shin argued that they should go all out to win instead of simply buying time for Sung. Soyeon then motivated Jin Young by emphasizing his important role in this round. Aksa charged to fight Jester, who immediately vanished. Aksa presumed Jester had reappeared behind him, but it was a decoy, causing Jester to disappear yet again. It was revealed that Jiho was playing Jester. Distracted, Soyeon took a hit from the enemy tank, Baronet, sending Spiro flying. Aksa fought valiantly against Jester, swinging his sword rapidly, but he failed to land a hit. Jester continued his onslaught. Link, however, was able to heal Aksa in the nick of time. Bluminance joined the fray, making it a 2 versus 1 scenario, but Jester easily handled them both, taunting them as noobs. Soyeon instructed Jin Young to distract Jester, while Bluminance went after the enemy's healer, Imamiz. In fear, Imamiz retreated towards Baronet for protection. In the midst of the chaos, Aksa mispositioned himself, creating an opportunity for Jester to strike. Jin Young tried to find the perfect timing to parry Jester's attacks, but Jester outsmarted him and easily defeated Aksa. Jester then used his ultimate move against Bluminance, finishing the game in an easy 8 minutes and 52 seconds in round 2. Frustrated by their loss, Sung's team was disheartened. Jin Young felt guilty for being defeated so easily. However, Sung patted Jin Young's shoulder and assured him he did well. Suddenly, Sung came up with a new strategy. He proposed to swap positions with Ari this time. The enemy team celebrated their victory, while Jiho was apologetic to his team for his absence in the first match, which had led to their defeat. Unexpectedly, it was revealed that Sung's team captain would not be participating in the third round of the game. Despite this, Sung made a promise to Ari that he and Jin Young would secure a victory together. Ari agreed with Sung's determination and encouraged him to give it his all. In the third round, Aksa didn't hold back and charged straight towards the enemy team. However, their formidable tank, Baronet, blocked Aksa's path. From the sidelines, Spiro dashed forward. Baronet and Aksa found themselves locked in a duel, evenly matched. Baronet's player quickly figured out Sung's strategy of taking out the backline, while the tanks were preoccupied with each other. He commanded his teammate, Jiho, to launch an attack focusing on their main DPS. Jiho, however, struggled to counter Spiro, feeling a strange sense of familiarity with Spiro's fighting style. Despite Jiho knowing his opponent was stronger, Sung recognized that Jiho was the esteemed one-sword player ranked 125th. Spiro and Jester managed to put some distance between themselves, and Spiro took the opportunity to taunt Jester, triggering Jiho's emotions and causing him to lose focus. His team captain warned him to remain composed and stick to the plan. In response, Jigdra healed Jester, allowing him to re-engage with Spearow. However, Spearow deftly dodged all of Jester's attacks and retaliated with a counterblow. Sensing Jester's calmness, Spearow realized his opponent had grown. Jester planned to deploy his ultimate move to take out Spearow with a powerful combo, and Spyro prepared to counter with his own ultimate skill. Jester abruptly dashed to Spearow's side, believing his point-blank range would ensure Spearow couldn't escape his ultimate attack. But in a surprise move, Spearow disappeared, only to reappear and land his ultimate on Jester. His punch-united state of smash sent Jester flying. This was followed by a final attack from Soyeon that finished Jester off, securing a victory for Sung's team. Sung's team celebrated their victory. Meanwhile, Sung left his seat, rushing towards Jae-deok to call him of his old ID name, Blood Moon Hurricane. This left Jae-deok somewhat embarrassed. After the match, Jin-young was ecstatic over his first win, expressing his triumph loudly outside the cafe. Soyeon was pleased by this, but Sung found Jin-young's exuberant behavior a bit cringeworthy. Meanwhile, Mr. Yeon tried to persuade the school principal to allow the students to use the clubroom during study hall. The principal questioned him about the students' grades, which took Mr. Yeon by surprise. He admitted that while Chang-yun and Soyeon were doing well academically, the others had average grades, a revelation that displeased the principal. Eventually, the principal agreed to the request, but set a condition. If the grades of the two top-performing students dropped in the upcoming final exams, the club activities would be discontinued. In the clubroom, Ari asked Sung and Jin-young if they had slept well the previous night. Sung hesitated, while Jin-young blurted out that he had stayed awake out of excitement over his victory. Sung admitted to having reviewed the match replay and slept late because he was making notes on the gameplay. Ari was left speechless by their behavior. Soyeon tried to console her, revealing that she too hadn't slept well. Ari remembered how she'd spent her own night watching her idol, the esports player Lee Jin-a, compete in a tournament. Ari was brought back to reality by the loud typing sounds from Chang-yoon's keyboard. She wondered if Chang-yoon had left early after the match because he was upset they hadn't followed his strategy. Chang-yoon remembered noticing Sung pull Jae-deok aside, revealing their true identities as one-sword players, Sung being first and Jae-deok 125th. When questioned, Chang-yun simply answered Ari by saying he believed Sung would win regardless, a response that left Ari feeling a bit annoyed. Mr. Yeon entered the clubroom and announced to the students that they were allowed to use it during study hall, mentioning the principal's conditions. Following this, Chang-yun began explaining their last match against Pogok High. They had performed well and were fortunate not to have faced any pro-gamer trainees. He commended Jin-young on his performance, which sent Jin-young into a daydream where he imagined himself as a superstar, striking familiar poses. Chang-yun explained that their new strategy would center on Sung when he was on the team, and Ari when Jin-young was playing. He cautioned Jin-young that his entire team would suffer if he went down in a match. Jin-young agreed wholeheartedly. Chang-yun offered to lend Sung a computer for playing ranked games to practice. He also mentioned that the famous YouTube players, Garaf and Lee Jin-a, wanted to meet Sung's team in person. This revelation shocked both Ari and Sung. Sung returned home and opened Chang-yun's laptop, wondering if it was powerful enough to handle the Sword Rush game. He discovered that the laptop far surpassed his old, outdated PC. With a touch of nostalgia, Sung bid farewell to his wood PC. Sung then spent 2 hours playing the game in non-competitive mode to practice the mechanics. He easily won all his matches and quickly reached the maximum level, making him eligible to play placement matches. Meanwhile, in her room, Ari was reminiscing about the surprise announcement that Lee Jin wanted to meet Sung. This had astounded them all, considering that Lee Jin-a, who was also on the National Sword Rush team, was currently ranked first. Mr. Yeon was confused, and Chang-yoon clarified that there used to be a game called One Sword, identical to Sword Rush in every aspect except the graphics. Lee Jin-a was a one-sword player but had only managed to rank second. The undisputed top player was Sung. This revelation made them understand why Sung was so proficient at Sword Rush. Ari had suspected something like this, but hadn't expected Sung to be ranked higher than Lee Jin-a. She pondered how skilled Sung must be and decided to review the game replays. Ari was astounded by Sung's prowess and began to notice her own tactical errors, especially her tendency to focus on one-on-one battles She recognized Sung's efforts to support the team and felt embarrassed about her own shortcomings. This realization made her understand that she needed to improve herself as a leader. Sung started his ranked match, wondering if he could reclaim his place as the top-ranked player. Sung easily defeated all the new players, which led to those players reporting him for hacking. Sung knew he needed to familiarize himself with the gameplay to prepare for real battle. Back at home, Changyun seemed to be having a conversation on Discord in front of his computer. It appeared that he was discussing preparations with Garaf for their upcoming meeting with Sung. Sung started his next match and realized that even in placement games, the players were skilled enough to establish a solid team composition. Sung consulted his notes to learn more about managing the character Saigun. In the lobby chat, Sung indicated to his team that he wanted to play as Spiro instead of a tank. His teammates accused him of trolling the game, exhibiting typical toxicity seen in online games. Sung tried to convince his team once again, but they became even more aggressive. However, after a while, they checked his profile and saw that Sung had a 90s win rate with Spyro. They eventually agreed to let Sung play as Spiro. The game began, and Spiro's declaration that he would protect everyone was somewhat endearing, given his childlike size. Spiro dashed forward to engage Saigun, managing to counter Saigun's attack. Saigun held his ground and continued to fight evenly with Spiro. Sung recognized that these players weren't bad either. Suddenly, Saigun vanished, only to reappear beside Spiro and launch a surprise attack, followed by an ultimate skill aimed at finishing Spiro off. However, Spiro managed to counter the ultimate just in time and followed up with a combo, repeatedly hitting Saigun until he was defeated. Sung was taken aback by Saigun's impressive play and wanted to press a hotkey for a respect emote. However, he accidentally pressed the taunt emote instead, resembling a typical toxic player. The match ended and Saigun's player messaged Sung, challenging him to a one-on-one battle. At the same moment, Sung received a message from Jae Deok saying that Changyun wanted to meet him and asking about it. Jinyoung was being punished by having to stand in his classroom, and Sung gave him a typical toxic thumbs up. Sung swiftly turned his head when their teacher was about to glance in his direction, which further irked Jinyoung. He remembered his to-do list for the day included punching Sung in the stomach. In the club room, Changyun asked Sung how the placement matches went. Sung requested more time to use Changyun's laptop and Changyun granted him permission. Changyun then explained that their next match would be against Boonhoon High. The school tournaments have become something of a shortcut to going pro. That's why the skill level in high school team has jumped considerably. This team kind of appeared out of nowhere. They even had the highest score in last year's friendly matches. Their strategy is basically causing mayhem just like Sung's team. Their strategy is basically putting their healer on the offensive and baiting 1-versus-1 battles, which tends to render their opposition's strategy useless. Changyun recognized that if Sung's team stuck with their old plan, they will literally be mayhem. Suddenly, a voice came from the direction of the club room's door. Everyone turned to see who it was. Garaf entered the room, introducing himself as a streamer. Garaf insisted on starting to film, to which Changyun found impolite and questioned his intention. Garaf explained that he wanted to meet the player behind Spiro God, Sung. After finding him, Garaf shook Sung's hand, complimenting his impressive gameplay while slyly questioning if he's really that good. Changyun mentioned that Garaf had made substantial donations to the school, which warranted his presence there. Garaf then called his team to deliver high-spec computers to every member of the club. He requested them to make a grand debut on his YouTube channel. Everyone in the club was astonished by the quality of the PC and wondered what Garaf's real aim was. He suggested live streaming Sung's placement matches, as he hadn't completed them yet. Garaf thought of a clickbait video title, "What happens when a user with a 90s win rate on a trash hero finishes placement matches?" He also planned a clickbait thumbnail, hoping Sung would become a YouTube celebrity. Despite his hopes, he received no response from the club members. Just then, Garaf received a notification and had to leave for his next gig, bidding everyone farewell. Sung didn't seem to appreciate Garaf's persona, thinking he talked too much. Sung wanted to concentrate on the inter-school tournament, preferring to compete as a team rather than individually. However, Jinyoung thought it wouldn't hurt to feature Sung's placement matches on Garaf's channel. He teased Sung for being useless at anything besides Sword Rush, which annoyed Sung. The team left the decision to Sung. Next, Changyun asked the team to wrap things up as he needed to continue explaining about Boonhoon High. He took out a whiteboard to elaborate on their strategy. He noted that Sheen often charged in as a healer due to his anger management issues, which irritated Shin slightly. Chang Yun pointed out that having the healer at the front line can sometimes be beneficial, as it lures the opposition into one-on-one battles. When the enemy team steps forward to assist their teammate, Boon Hoon Hai would cut them off. Surprisingly, they always made sure never to move beyond their healer's effective range. Their primary DPS excelled at one-on-one fights, often defeating opponents. Chang Yun also mentioned that it's common to see a skill gap between key players and their teammates, especially when key players are not playing their preferred role. He hinted to Soyeon that she might struggle playing any other role effectively. Boon Hoon Hai's strategy was essentially designed to break the typical tank, DPS, healer composition meta. Chang Yun handed Sung a bottle of medicine, inquiring about his motion sickness. Sung explained he could play 2 matches back-to-back, but struggled if he reached the late game in round 2. Chang Yun suggested that Sung should rest during every second round. He then asked about Ari's wrist. Ari admitted her wrist had been tingling occasionally. Suddenly, the clubroom door creaked open. A female voice said it seemed a bit too early to start having wrist problems. Ari looked shocked to see someone. It appeared a beautiful Nuna had walked in. The beautiful Nuna introduced herself as Lee Jin-A from Team S91. Jin-Young was surprised by the day's events, while Ari being the fangirl. Lee straight to the point and asked to meet the player known as Spiro God. Jin-Young immediately grabbed Sung and presented him to her. Sung and Lee looked at each other, finally meeting their gaming friend in real life. Lee was touched to see Sung, who started to mention her One Sword's ID name, X Broken Heart Slayer X. Feeling embarrassed, Lee stopped him mid-sentence by covering his mouth with her hand. Afterwards, Lee took Sung in her luxury sports car, leaving him wondering why a famous and busy person like her would come to his school. Lee mentioned that she wanted to check on the Spiro player and seduce Sung, playfully taking off her sunglasses. Sung was unsure about her intention behind the word seduce. Lee invited Sung to join her team, S91, hinting at significant changes in the Pro League. Curious, Sung asked about these changes. Lee explained that they wanted to implement a solo league in Sword Rush. She brought Sung to their training facility, where they ran into an esports player trying to enter the elevator. The player, resembling Aimee Cutie Pie, wondered if Sung was Spiro. After Sung politely greeted him, Lee stated that she was busy, grabbed Sung, and held him close, causing Sung to blush slightly. In an office room, Lee discussed the upcoming tournament and the steady growth in Sword Rush's popularity. She mentioned that after the school tournament ended, the developers of Sword Rush planned to use the pro leagues to increase the popularity of strong players from the school tournament. She pointed out that it was challenging to debut individual pro gamers with team matches because they were bound to their respective teams. Regarding solo play, she indicated that the undefeated Spiro, right in front of her, was a perfect candidate. Lee suggested a 1-versus-1 match with Sung, who agreed. She was excited to see Sung's old skills. They entered a map featuring a floating island with cold weather. Lee's character, Blift, unleashed her laser sword and leaped towards Spiro. Sung recalled his notes about Blift's skills, recognizing that they perfectly suited Lee's playstyle. Blift was fast, prompting Sung to try and stay outside of her attack range. Realizing Sung's strategy, Lee accused him of being rusty. Lee initiated her attack on Spiro, who countered it. However, she managed to push Spiro away, interrupting his combo. Sung realized Lee had improved, but she acknowledged that Sung's reflexes and composure were still the same. Blift leapt upwards, throwing a barrage of slices towards Spiro. Spiro parried each attack successfully. As Spiro moved behind Blift, she used her waterfall skill, slicing towards Spiro, who managed to counter, creating distance between them. Lee was surprised that Sung, despite only recently starting to play Sword Rush, had already regained many of his skills. Sung admitted he wasn't quite there yet, but vowed not to let her win easily. Lee smiled at this. They reminisced about the old days, with a young Sung playing one sword and high school-aged Lee doing the same. Sung realized that Blift was using her ultimate, so Spiro decided to use his ultimate as well, a super counter that reflects all attack, including ultimate ones, back at the opponent, but Sung was taken aback when Blift's attack animation stopped. Spiro launched his ultimate, but there was nothing to reflect back. Confused, Sung swore she had been using an ultimate. Suddenly, Blift resumed her ultimate, clarifying that in Sword Rush, ultimate skills can be cancelled. She utilized her ultimate, a rapid rush skill that nullifies the opponent's defenses. With a swift slash, Blift defeated Spiro. Even though Sung was beaten by Lee, He was content because he had fun during the match. It felt just like playing one sword. Lee found it hard to believe that Sung had only been playing Sword Rush for a month. Convinced of Sung's skills, Lee welcomed him to join her team. Sung accepted, shaking her hand, and he missed her. Lee, too, admitted she had missed Sung and warmly embraced him. Is she a waifu material? In the S91 meeting room, Lee acknowledged that Garaf had offered Sung the opportunity to stream his placement match on Garaf's channel. She wondered if Sung had mentioned to Garaf anything about being ranked first in one sword. Sung explained he hadn't had a chance to speak. Lee thought it would be a good idea to draw some attention before Sung's debut. She suggested that Sung should accept Garaf's offer, but on the condition that his identity and face not be revealed. In other words, he shouldn't play as Spiro in the placement match. Instead, Lee wanted Sung to make his grand debut as Spiro at the Solo League. As Lee dropped Sung off at the cafe, Sung thanked her for the ride. Lee expressed her intent to stay in touch with Sung and advised him to keep his phone on him at all times. Jae-deok, who was inside the cafe, happened to spot them both. Shocked and momentarily stunned, he became jealous, thinking Sung was involved in a clandestine romance with Lee. He immediately asked Sung for an explanation, to which Sung explained that he had agreed to join Lee's team. Jae-deok started imagining Sung's future with Lee, sharing meals with her, calling her Nuna, and eventually evolving to Babe. Sung tried to steer the conversation back to the main point, that they were meeting because Chang-yeon wanted to see Jae-deok, and Sung had a scrim soon. Jae-deok revealed that one of his friends, Seong-min, attended Bonghoon High. Chang-yeon wanted information about Seong-min, and Jae-deok was surprised that Chang-yeon had discovered something about Song-min. Sung, too, was taken aback at how much Chang-yeon knew. While Jae-deok didn't mind sharing information, he was starting to suspect Chang-yeon already knew quite a lot of it. Sung changed the topic and asked if Seong-min was a good player, expressing his excitement to fight him. Jae-deok confirmed that Seong-min was good, mentioning that his fighting style was like a tanky healer. Slowly, they recognized that someone with a similar fighting style in one sword went by the name Pink Undi. In the S91 director's room, Lee entered to find the director curious about Sung's skill. She reported on Sung's capabilities, acknowledging that he needed some polishing. The director expressed concern about Sung's reflexes becoming rusty. However, Lee corrected him, stating that Sung's reflexes were intact. It's just that Sung had been playing one sword instead of Sword Rush. Lee reassured the director that they had her in their corner. In the club room, everyone was engrossed in their games, but Soyeon wondered if they should practice with Sung. Ari told them not to worry and recalled the day when pro gamer Lee Jin-H was searching for Sung. She looked up Sung's history as a player in One Sword. According to community posts, Sparrow had a massive impact on One Sword, both enhancing and ruining the game for many players. The comment sections were filled with a mix of praise and hate towards Spiro. Ari noted that One Sword had shut down 5 years ago and was taken aback by the fact that Sung, a grade school student at the time, had once dominated the pro gamers. As Ari continued reading community posts about Spiro, she discovered that developers had even created heroes based on Sung's strategies, solidifying his reputation as a next-level player. Suddenly, Sung entered the club room, wondering where to start. Mr. Yeon informed him that they were currently in a duo queue practice match and began to explain a new strategy that Chang-yeon had come up with. Taking out a whiteboard, Mr. Yeon went over the strategy in detail with Sung. Once Sung understood the plan, Mr. Yeon asked how Sung's workplace tour with Lee went. Sung revealed that he had agreed to join Team S91, leaving everyone in shock. He explained that Team S91 had promised to assist Sung's club team by letting them train with S91's trainees, and that he had also accepted Garaf's request. The members were overwhelmed trying to process all this new information. Mr. Yeon congratulated Sung on his achievement and suggested sharing the good news with the principal. Chang-yeon pointed out that if the club team won the school tournament, they might also have a chance to join Team S91. Ari questioned what Chang-yeon meant, and Chang-yeon clarified that if Sung's mention of other trainees in the tournament was true, then winning such a tournament could bring them one step closer to debuting as pro players. However, it would not be an easy task. Later, when Sung arrived at Garaf's apartment, he felt quite nervous. Garaf welcomed him and expressed surprise that Sung hadn't mentioned joining Team S91. Regardless, Garaf promised to respect Sung's conditions to the best of his ability. Garaf welcomed Sung into his shiny room, which made Sung feel nervous. Garaf led Sung to his gaming room and suggested he wear a mask. Back at the clubroom, Jinyoung, Shin, and Ari were eagerly waiting for Garaf's live stream to start to watch Sung's placement match. When Jinyoung received a notification that the stream had started, they all tuned in. Garaf, the commentator, announced that Sung had finished his first placement match and was heading into the remaining 9. Sung picked a character named Aksa for the matches. In the game, Aksa charged towards the enemy team and used his infliction skill on an enemy. The enemy, panicking after losing health from Aksa's attack, began wildly using their skills. However, Aksa dodged all the attacks and counterattacked, hitting the enemy from behind for extra damage. He continued his assault until the enemy's health was low. Suddenly, Aksa switched targets and aided his teammate who was under attack by the enemy's DPS. Aksa used his skill, Garrot, to pull the nearest DPS away and slash them, dragging them further from his team. This allowed his teammate to safely engage in a one-on-one fight, while Aksa took the opportunity to finish off the DPS. Sung secured victory in the 9th placement match. Garaf kept praising Sung's excellent performance. Sung, thinking Garaf was talking too much, took a break and drank some water before the next match. After waiting 10 minutes, Sung finally found a match. Surprisingly, he was matched against top-ranker players. Garaf knew why the matchmaking had taken so long. Suddenly, one of the players in the chat challenged Sung to a one-on-one match. Excited for the entertainment this would bring to the stream, Garaf grabbed Sung and shook him. The match started with Aksa facing the opponent in a one-on-one. Aksa dashed towards his adversary and attempted to use the skill Garrot to pull the opponent, but the opponent managed to block his attack. Their fight was evenly matched until Aksa realized his opponent's plan. Reacting quickly, Aksa leapt upward just as the opponent smashed the floor. Aksa countered with a rapid 4-hit combo, which the opponent countered by using a skill to knock Aksa back. The two continued to clash evenly until the opponent's weapon broke from overuse. Seizing the opportunity, Aksa struck down his opponent, securing another victory. Celebrating Sung's win, Garaf declared that Sung had won all the MVP awards in the matches. He grabbed Sung and danced around, putting on a dramatic show for the audience. The result of the placement match was that Sung moved into the ranking match, a result that confused them both as they hadn't expected such an outcome. Back at school, many students recognized Sung from Garaf's channel, despite him wearing a mask to hide his identity. Some students wondered if Sung would become a YouTuber, but Sung immediately dismissed the idea, recalling the awkward incident where Garaf had grabbed him and danced.